Hello friends, in this video we are going to see how to implement add, edit and delete in HTML grid in MVC with code first approach. Now in this video we will create a controller method to render add, edit forms, and we will save data to database on form submission. We will use Bootstrap to design the forms. Now I suggest you to watch the part 1, that is rendering simple grid in MVC with code first approach using Bootstrap. Now we have continued on the same example and same application and same project. So let's see the application. I'll give you a small overview in case you have not watched the part 1. So in this we have a simple model. If you go to the model, we have an employee model wherein we have few properties. So these are the 6 properties we have in the model. Then we have our context class, which inherit from DB context, and we have a simple table, that is employees, and then we have a simple home controller. Inside this home controller I have a single method index, and inside the controller I have created a private object of context class, and I'm returning the employees to this index method. And if I go to the view, I'm accepting a model of enumerable employees, and inside the view, if you check, I have created a tabular structure wherein I'm iterating over the employees and rendering the employee data. So if I run the application, so data looks like this, the grid looks like this, and the database is created by code first approach. The database name is samplegrid.model.gridContext, and the table name is employees. And if you select the records, we have currently 13 records in our database. So let's move further on implementing the edit and delete and add functionality. So I'll start with edit and delete. In order to have edit and delete, let's reserve some space for edit and delete in the table header section. Then in the body section we'll have 2 links, one for edit and the other for delete. So now in order to edit, on click of edit link I want to render a form. Inside that form I'm going to populate the data. So in order to do that, I'll use html.action link. Okay, so this will render an anchor tag which will post to a action result method which will render the edit form. So let me give the value to the parameter. The first parameter is link text, so edit is my link. Second parameter is the name of the action method, so I'm going to create edit action method. My next parameter is I'm going to use this overload of the action link method, action link helper. So my controller name is home, and I'm going to send one ID from this link, and that ID will be ID equal to my current employee dot employee ID. So when the user will click on this edit link, the employee ID of that particular row will be sent to the action result method. And my final parameter is object HTML attribute, which I am going to send as null. Similarly, I'll have delete link. For delete link, I'm going to have delete action method in the home controller. Similarly, I'm going to send the employee ID for delete as well. So this is the work on the HTML view has been done. So if you refresh the page, you can see edit and delete links had been shown on the grid. Now let's wire up these links to the action result method. So in order to have edit, so I'll render action result edit, and I'm going to accept one ID, that is the employee ID. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to return a view, and to the view I'm going to pass the employee particular to this ID. So to do that, I'm going to write context.employees.where. I'm using a where condition. I'm passing the lambda expression where employee ID equals the employee ID I'm sending from the view, and I'm sure it is a single record in the database. So I'm sending the single employee to the edit view, and I'm going to add a view name edit empty template. I'm not going to use any layout. So when this view will be rendered, I'm expecting a model of type sample.models.employee, as I'm sending a single employee from the action result method. In the index case, I was sending the list, so in this case, in this view, we have accepted model of type INumerable, but in edit case we are only sending a single object, so that is why we have accepted a model of type employee. So we are basically using strongly typed views here. So now inside this div element I'm going to render the form. So in order to render the form, I'm going to use html dot begin form, and inside the form I'm going to use html dot editor for model. So this helper renders the controls for all the properties present inside the model. So my model is employee. So basically this will render controls for all the properties. Now I'll also have one button. This button is basically of type submit. I'm going to set its value attribute to submit. So on click of this button, this form will be posted to a action method that I'm going to write in the home controller. So let me check first how it looks, whether the edit view is getting called or not. So this is my grid. Now I'm going to edit third record. So let me click on edit. So you can see edit view is rendered with the pre-populated data. So we are sending this employee from, you can see if we debug the code, if we press refresh, you can see we are sending 3 ID here. We are fetching the employee based on ID 3. We are sending it to the view, and then we are rendering that data. We are strongly binding that data to the model so that it pre-populates the controls with the data present in the model. Now I'm going to wire up this submit button to the action result method at the controller, so that if you make any changes on the form and you submit the form, the data should save to the database. So to do that, I'll write public action result method edit. As I have not provided any values in this parameters to this begin form, the form will be posted by default to edit action result method with http attribute, http post attribute. And in this method I'm going to accept an object of type employee, so that when the MVC runtime finds that there's a parameter of type class employee, the model binding tries to fetch the values from the request and it binds to this object. So when the form is posted to this method, this object is pre-populated with the values. Now in this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to update the context with this employee. So in order to do that, we write context dot entry. Now my entry is of type sample dot models dot employee. I'm going to pass this employee. I'm going to make its state as modified, so I can modify the state, and after that we just have to call context.state changes. So this will update the employee to the database, and after that I'm going to return successfully to the index view. So in order to do that, I'll use return redirect to action, and my action name is index. So once the user is updated, it will redirect to this index method and the main page will be rendered. So let's run and see whether it works or not. So my first page is rendered. Now I'm going to edit this third record, so I click on edit. So you can see the debugger hit and accordingly the data will be populated. Now for him I'm going to change his designation to SE, and I'm going to change his experience to 4 years, and I'm going to submit the form. So you can see the SE has been populated and his year of experience has been to 4. Similarly, if you check in database also, now currently you can check he's SSC and year of experience is 8. If you execute it again, he's now SSC and 4. So the data is being saved to the database. Similarly, let's wire delete. So in case of delete, we are also we are sending employee ID and we are expecting a delete action result method to be present in the controller. So let's write a method. As we are not going to render a separate form, so we'll be having a single method which will handle the delete, and we are expecting an ID which will be the employee ID. So this parameter ID and the parameter we set here should match, otherwise the method will not be called. So inside this we are going to say context dot employees dot remove. Now it expects the entity of type employee. So in order to do that, we'll have where employee equal to underscore context dot employees dot where. I mean, we are going to first fetch that employee. So in order to do that, we are going to fetch it based on employee ID. So first we are fetching that employee and then we are removing that employee from the context. And once that is done, we are going to redirect back to our index view. So basically when you click on the delete, it will delete it from the database, and again this index will be called so that the page refreshes and it will be removed from the grid. So let's run the application again to check its effect. So now I'm going to delete 3, 4 and 5 record. So I click on 3, delete it. Oh, there is some problem and the delete, I think. Oh, I missed context.save changes. So that is very important. Context.save changes. Now let's run the application again. Now I'm going to delete record 3, 4 and 5. So I click on delete 3, 4 and 5. Now if I check in database, you can see 3, 4 and 5 are missing from the database also. So this is about the edit and delete. So by this way you can wire up edit and delete to the controller. Now let's move to our add part. So in order to do that, add is similar to the edit, so in that case also we have to render a form. So I'll have a simple action link at the top of the grid. So I say my link text will be add, my action result method name will be add also, my controller name would be home, and I'm not going to pass any route values. I'm not going to have any route values, so I'm going to pass it as null. So now in the home controller I'm going to have public action result add. As I'm going to add, so in this case I'm going to show the blank form on the UI, so that is why I'm not accepting any ID or something. So in that case I'm just going to return view, and I'll have corresponding action result method to which the form will be posted. So in this case I'm going to accept object of our employee model class, and let me write the code in advance. So I'll say context dot employees, that is the data set, db set, sorry, dot add what, the employee, and then I'll be saving the changes. Then after the add operation I'll be redirecting to the index so that we can see the changes on our home page where the grid is being rendered, that is the index form. So now let me add view. So in this view, similar to edit, I'm going to accept model, that is sample grid.models.employee, and I'm going to have, similar to edit, I'm going to render the form for the add. The only difference between add and edit is, for in the edit case we are passing the object of employee, a single record of employee, so that it gets pre-populated on the UI. But in case of add we are not passing anything. We want user to add information, so in that case we are rendering a blank as nothing is passed to the view. So let's run the application. Oh, there is some problem. Home control is ambiguous between, okay, I think I forgot to add HTTP post. So these are the silly mistakes we commit. So it is necessary to have something different if the name matches. So the controller said it is ambiguous calls, so I have to decorate this add with HTTP post. Now run the application again. Now there's an add link. If you click on add link, it will redirect me to the add view, and inside this view you can see there's an employee ID control. Basically employee ID is our primary key, so we don't want this control to be shown on the UI. So in that case we can always go to our model class. We can refer to system.component.data annotation, and we can decorate this employee property with scaffold column false. So in that case the editor for model helper, that is we have used in our view to render the controls like this, it will skip that property and will not generate the record. So if I again run the application, and I add one player, so I say employee 1 is my name, my age is 27, my designation is SSE, my location is Moon, and my experience is 6 years, and I click on submit. So the record is being saved and I have been redirected to index form. You can see the record has been shown in the grid. So if you check database also, you'll find the record at the end. So this is how you can add, edit and delete in MVC5 with very simple things using code first approach. So now I'll be moving to improving the design of these forms using the Bootstrap. So to do that, let's move to the edit view first. So you can see we have used editor for model helper. So what editor for model does, it creates the control for each property and label for each property. So in that case we won't be able to use Bootstrap efficiently. So we have another approach of doing that. Rather than using editor for model for entire model, we can create label and controls for each type. So for do that, I have already created the HTML. So let me copy my HTML and replace that entire div. So I paste my HTML here. So in there, what I'm doing, I'm creating label and text box individually for each property, and I'm using Bootstrap classes. Like for input controls, I'm using form control class, and for each div I'm using from group, and for the button I'm using button primary. So let me change it to button success, and if I go to the view and if it refresh, you can see there's no effect. This is because we have not referenced the Bootstrap CSS files on the view. So let me do that, and then you check the magic after that. So let me refresh the page. So you can see there's a hell lot of difference in the view. The form looks quite well, and the UI looks very astonishing. So similarly, I can have a link at the top of this div. So I say HTML dot action link back to grid, and the action name I want to call is index. Okay, and route is null, and I'm going to give a class to this action link, and that is btn primary. This is the Bootstrap class, so it will give button appearance to the link. So if I refresh the page, you can see a button at the top. Let me put one more br, so there will be a space between form and the back to grid. So if I click on this, I'll go back to the grid. Okay, so let's do same for the add button in the index. So we can assign similar thing. So I want to add the same class here as well. Okay, and I'll have two br tags for the space between the grid and the button. So if you can see, the button is rendered, but still it doesn't look properly. So let's have some margin left to 20 pixel and margin top to 50 pixel. So let's see how it looks. Now it looks good. So if you click on add, you go to a new page. So we have not done the styling for add, but we have done it for edit. So similarly, we'll do it for add as well. So just go to the edit, as the form part is exactly the same. So what we can do, we can copy this div completely, go to the add and replace this div with this div of the edit, and then refresh the page, click on add. Oh, style is not being applied. This is because we are not using layout in our application, so we have to manually refer these Bootstrap CSS files on each view. So I'm referring it on add as well. So I refresh the page again, so you can see a very well UI, very well rendered UI, which gives very good and nice effects. So let me add one more employee. So I say Lionel, my age is 26, my designation is SSC, my location is Barcelona, and my experience is 4 years. And I click on submit button, you can see Lionel. So this is how you can create a simple add, edit and delete functionality with the HTML grid, and you can make it look astonishing by using simple Bootstrap classes. So this is all about our tutorial, that is add, edit and delete in HTML grid and MVC5 with code first and Bootstrap. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you friends.